So everyone, welcome to the conversion training for People's Choice Classic. You've seen this image here before, and either in your mailing or on the website. We'll be going over the what we'll be covering today is reasons to upgrade. I mean, all of you are here. There are quite a few People's Choice Classic customers and users who don't use payroll. This particular webinar is targeted specifically for those who do use the payroll, and it'll be heavily weighted towards that. There are other reasons for upgrading, but we'll review those. And why do it now versus waiting till the 1st of January? And I'm going to explain a little on the category of the People's Choice Classic users. People use the program a little bit differently, and it does impact on the conversion process and how the things you have to do to get everything in sync. We'll do an overview of the conversion process. I'll show a before and after. We'll do a little bit of a couple of simple transactions, and then we'll go through the outline of everybody who decides to participate in the course going forward. We'll go through the checklist of things and how they'll be handled. The prerequisites before the first Zoom class on October 5th. All the classes that we have will be recorded just like this one. So if you're unable to attend a particular class, you still will be getting a big copy of the video that you can watch after the fact. There will be a Q&A in each one. And what will be the next steps for going forward with the course. We do have a special accountant's copy that we'll review, and then there'll be a question and answer at the end. So why, oops, I think we skipped a slide here, excuse me. There we go. So the reasons to upgrade. Some of you are interested in direct deposit, some need more to pay types, some need more deductions, some want to track for the employer benefits, which is something you can't do in the Classic program. Some want to be able to generate the actual 941 form, which you can't do in the Classic program. Once you get up and running, payroll can go much faster because you do payroll in batches, as you'll see in a few minutes. It streamlines the W-2 and 1099 processing. We still use the e-file portal, but it works directly with it. You don't have to export to the SafeChoice e-filer. And there's many other features with vacation and so forth. And then some of you are also, besides the payroll features, are interested in the check printing to blank check stock or the recurring check payments, accounts payable. There is some of you in the Classic use the unpaid bills, and it's a much more sophisticated accounts payable system. In the upgrade, and if you want into comprehensive inventory management, there are options to go to the cloud with this version. We will be doing the course on the desktop, but if you decide you want to move to the cloud, that will be no problem at all, and we'll cover that during the course. And there are add-on modules for job costing or escrow and many other reasons to upgrade. But the point is, why upgrade now and get everything going and not wait till January 1st? Well, our programming department has been working diligently this year in converting the data from the People's Choice Classic program into the current version. They are on 2 different platforms, so it isn't just a simple install and an upgrade and converts and everything. So we have learned from experience, it's best before you try to take advantage of any of those new upgrade features that we first run the system side by side and know everything's working in the upgrade just as it worked in Classic before moving on and implementing. So the first goal is to get it to process that way. And once we get that in sync, then we will look at how you go about adding on new features or things such as adding new employees and so on and so forth. So if you are going to take advantage of those features through the course of the fourth quarter, we will have those already in place. So when you start out January 1, everything is ready to roll to operate with all the new features. We need to kind of review a little bit on the category of People's Choice Classic users. Those that use just the payroll, if you open up your company menu and all you see on the module selection menu is payroll and disbursements, you aren't using accounting or accounts receivable. There's still two categories of people that are using it in this manner. Believe it or not, there's a number of users that they only use it for payroll. They don't maintain a checkbook balance and put in deposits and reconcile. They just give these totals to their accountant, and the payroll totals to the accountant, and let the accountant do the quarterly filing. And I know those particular ones. Whenever I work with them directly, I'll look up and their bank balance has a negative $1,400,000, and it's like, yeah, they're not using it for the checkbook. But many of you also who will only have the payroll disbursements use it for both the payroll and checkbook management, where you're doing the bank reconciliation and you're running the receipts and disbursement recap for cash flow reporting. And these are the people that would be using the basic accounting versus the premier accounting. And so all of the people are going to have accounting. You can still run it as a checkbook or just for the payroll once you upgrade. But we're going to be assuming for most people, well, you will have the accounting whether you use it or not. So this third category, you still just have basic accounting, but you're also going to plan on using the full general ledger that has the balance sheet and income statement. Those who go with the basic accounting, it's going to look like this. You're just going to have a banking, accounting, reports, and then payroll is a separate module. And there's two menu structures. There's what we call the classic, and I'm used to this one more than anything because this is pretty much the same menu we've had for 20 years, but we've also enhanced because many people like the drop-down menus. And so the banking gives you all the banking here, just like if you go to banking here. And so there's two different menus that can be used. Most of the course will be centered around the classic menu. Those who need the premier accounting are those who use accounts receivable, whether you have the accounting or you're just using it as a bookkeeping, like the payroll disbursements as far as the cash flow goes. But if your menus look like this and you use the accounts receivable, then you'll need the premier accounting. And for the premier accounting, if you're using that particular one, then the menu is going to look like this, which is essentially the same as what you saw before, only there's two items added to the menu, the purchases menu and the sales menu. This is where you do the invoices. In the purchases, if you were going to implement the accounts payable and track individual vendors and how much you owe them and pay them once a month or do things in batches, those are the two items that would be added with the premier accounting. The banking and accounting menus are still the same, but you can see the drop-down menus have added the sales and purchases just as it did with the basic accounting menu. We will be using when you first download and install the 60-day trial, if you're participating in the program, it's going to be loading as the premier accounting. And when you get the activation to activate it out of the 60-day trial, it'll, however you told us that you're using it, you'll get the activation for the basic accounting or the premier accounting sometime during the course of October. But once you've installed it, it's the 60-day trial has everything activated. So the payroll's activated, it's premier activated. So everything that can be used in the fully licensed program is available in the 60-day trial. So we're going to go a little bit into the before and after. I've taken a data set that we've actually converted. I've went in and we've scrubbed the data as far as the names and addresses and social security numbers and so forth. And we did the payroll for the month of September, which is going to be one of the requirements before you upload your data to have it converted, is that you complete your September. And so these are the two. This is the before we converted, and this is after we converted. There's a banking journal in the upgrade that has a screen that you can see looks very much the same. You know, here's the bank balance of 1911.45. Here's the bank balance of 1911.45. You can see some of the checks that were written in Classic here are showing up over here in the conversion. This is how it would look if it was your data on the People's Choice Classic and you moved it over to the conversion into there. That's what you would see. I'm going to attempt here to bring up the actual live program. So in here, I can exit from this and you can see that it is in there, but we're going to go ahead and expand it. And this has been converted, and I'm going to close and hopefully everybody can see the main menu. Just I want to make sure I didn't lose the connection. Can you just see if it's the Premier menu with the PCC convert to PCA? Does everybody see that okay? Heather?
I'm not seeing it.
You're not seeing it? Okay. Then let me... You. Now are we seeing it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we're in the it's like I said, it's the Premier menu, and we've converted the data. So if I jump into the banking journals, you see what I showed you a little bit earlier. And when we're here, if you're using the system, you could go to there to see the checks you've written much and view them much like you did in Classic. But your check writing, if you're going to create checks, is going to be done in here. And you would click, you could still see a list of your recent checks, and you could pull up a particular check, and you can see the check here. You can see what the expense was. And if you have vendor set up with a default account, it still will set it up with the same default account because you'll have the same chart of accounts. What will be a little bit different than Classic is you actually have three different numbers that you can track. You can track by computer check, or if you have manual checks and you do both, you can track separate check numbers. And then we have an other category. And the other category is used for, like, if you have a debit card, if you're running through your bank account, then you would assign the debit transactions as others. Or in the way of payroll, quite often most people are going online to make their payroll deposits. So any checks that you're creating as far as a payroll deposit, typically you use other, so you don't get your check numbers out of whack. Otherwise, we'll go through the steps of creating a new check and so forth. But this is where the check writing would be done. And then there's the deposits. Again, you can see the deposits. This is all made with batch deposits. But if you were to create a new deposit, you can do a batch deposit just like you can do in Classic. Or if you're used to putting things in the receipts journal in Classic, you would go into the deposit slip where you could go ahead and you could add receipts. If you're using receivables, you would have a similar process like you do in Classic. But then from here, if I'll just type in a quick receipt here so you can see how it would get covered. Let me see, it's gonna check number 30, and we'll just say it's for $500, and it's for mouse go here. let's say it's a miscellaneous sale. And then you could list a number of them and click done. It will go ahead and it'll update this and do the distribution down there. You do have the option to print a deposit slip that would include the detail of what's on a deposit, so they'd all be listed here, and it's going to be taken with to the bank. And so that's some of the basics for most of you in terms of entering on a day-to-day basis. You're doing checks and you're doing deposits, and that's we'll be covering that again in the class. But in the way of payroll, we've just come back from having the data converted, so we're going to go into the payroll module. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. So when we're in the payroll module, this is where you'd be entered. It comes from here, you're going in to run a payroll, and the dates will come in. If you're doing weekly, it's going to convert. That's what our demo is here. But if you're doing it bi-weekly, it's going to convert bi-weekly. And so when you go into the enter pay data, all your employees are going to be listed here. They will all be listed with 0 quantity and hours. I've gone ahead and populated the 15 quantity, which is 15 hours. In the way of a salary, if you're on a salary, you put in a quantity of 1. It still could be equated to 40 hours, which is typically what's used for a workman's comp, even if you're on a salary. So you would go ahead and put in the hours that a particular employee has, and then you click calculate. Now, in our particular case, it brings up a feature that's unique, and we deal with it in the transition. But we have what's called an autocorrect feature in the current version of the program, meaning for Social Security and Medicare that are tied to a specific percentage, it will autocorrect it. So in Classic, it doesn't do that. If you have a particular salary and it's always a certain amount that's calculated, but it's actually a fraction of a cent. In this particular case, and we're showing it here, is we actually have different amounts of Social Security calculated because it's auto-correcting. In this particular data set, the way we confirm that is we look at the gross wages for the year and take it times the Social Security or Medicare percentage to come up with the actual amount that should have been withheld or calculated for the employer share. And we have found in our testing that it may be 3 to 10 cents difference over a period, especially this late in the year. So it does the autocorrect. What we'll be doing is we can go in, and this will be part of our exercise in the syncing of the data, is you still can go in and edit results and change the amount of the calculations. And since we'll be running side by side, and in the beginning, we'll be editing it back. But at some point, we'll let the autocorrect do its magic, and then it'll always, and you'll find as you go forward that for some employees, the Social Security will be a penny more or a penny less going from check to check, and that's part of the autocorrect system. But otherwise, besides doing this payroll, part of the conversion, you can go into pay reports, and you can see every payroll that was written in Classic over the past in this year. So you can go all the way back to the first payroll of the year, and you can look at a calc report, and it will show you the actual payroll from the first of the year. It's showing 1/1/23. So that's, I think, is a really cool feature. That was something that was developed to help with mid-year transition of the payroll. And it would be here where you would do the pay tax liabilities, and so you can track your payments. Right now you use the F5, and you have certain vendors that are tagged to it. Here's where you actually go in and you make your deposit and create your check. And again, this is where we quite often would use the the check with the other check number. So that's kind of a quick overview, and there's the various reports that we'll be going over in the system. But the main thing that we really wanted to show today is how turnkey it is when we do the conversion, that you, as soon as we've converted your data, you can go in and start running your payroll. Once we get everything in sync, and then we'll backtrack and get into the learning the other features for setting up the direct deposit or adding new pay types or so forth. So I'm going to switch back to our So do we see the before and after screen? Or are you still seeing the?
Does it before and after.
Okay, so I'll just make sure that we're okay. So you can, well, if you have other questions, we'll go ahead and. So the process in terms of having your data converted, what you'll do between now, if you've purchased the conversion upgrade, you'll be sent an email, and we have a special install of the People's Choice 60-day trial that's going to have a couple of extra companies. The converted data from a classic to the current version is, you'll still be on a cash basis, and we'll explain the difference between cash and accrual basis. Anybody that has receivables or wants payables and they want to go to an accrued basis, they'll have to wait till the first of the year. So you would be continuing on a cash basis, again, part of the side-by-side. Before you give us a backup, we want you to complete all of your entries for September in People's Choice Classic, especially having all the payroll information in. Ideally, you'll want to make your payroll deposit for the third quarter, but you don't have to. We can work with that, but definitely get all of your payroll in so that we'll be able to actually generate a 941. And so once you've gotten all your data entered in for September, then you'll make a backup and you'll upload it to the Safe Choice customer portal. And there'll be a video available on how to go about uploading to the Safe Choice customer portal if you've never done that before. Once we get the data, it will go to the programming department and the conversion will take place, and they will upload it to your customer portal, and you'll be sent a notification that that is up there. And we'll also be sending an email that will have a video of how you go ahead and download and restore that. This will, for many of you, this may not be done until even after the first class in October. Some just won't be able to get it to us by the 5th, but we'll still cover it, and you'll be able to participate in the class, and you'll still have the video from the class to play catch up if that's necessary. So the convert is in sync with FIRE reports. That's going to be really the first goal of the first couple of classes in October. And before you start entering in anything into the converted data, we want to run the reports and compare them with the People's Choice Classic reports to make sure that everything did convert and is in sync. And that will enable us to generate the 941 in the new version for third quarter, and knows that you're ready to be able to process the 941 for the fourth quarter. And one of the tests will be to also generate W-2s in People's Choice Classic and in the current version, just so we know that the W-2 processing is going to be correct as we reach the end of the year. And then we'll recreate the first payroll. You're going to be running side by side, and we'll do the matchings and the edits and so forth. So the objectives for October is to prep to go live. I mean, you're going to run side by side. So you'll continue to use People's Choice Classic throughout October. And then you'll be entering in those checks after the fact into the current new version, upgraded version. And that's the objective, to make sure it's calculating the same. like I said, we'll deal with that autocorrect feature to make sure things match up. And then once we know everything's matched up throughout the month of October, if you want to go live, you should be able to go live December 1st and no longer use People's Choice Classic. I, from experience, know some will be ready to go January or November 1st. Others are going, now I'm going to keep going side by side, and you may go side by side through the end of the year. That's going to be your choice. And we'll have the help you make the decision if you're ready to go or not. If for some reason, for whatever reason, we have to reconvert your data, that is going to be a possibility. If there was some corruption in your data or something that just wasn't right and we need to reconvert, that will be available during this month of October, running side by side. The classes, as I have them here, is subject to change. We want to be flexible with this, kind of based on the differences of those categories. If everybody, and I know that's not the case, seeing some of the names in there, but if everybody was just using payroll and they weren't using the checkbook or accounting or anything, I mean, we can kind of reassess the topics that are going to be held each time. And a lot of the feedback will come from you. So as we go into the later month of October and into November, we may change some of the topics. And as we get into the later months, as we approach the end of the year, we'll be making a reassessment based on feedback from you of what should be the topics. But every one of the classes will have a particular topic that will be focused on, and there will also be a Q&A at the end of each class so that we can answer specific questions or problems. All of you who purchased the upgrade, you'll have gotten 30 minutes of support through your early bird tax update purchase, and the conversion training, you get 60 minutes of support. So you'll have 90 minutes of support for one-on-one, where we may need to just work with you one-on-one to get certain things tweaked the way you want them to be tweaked. And so we want you to save those minutes for that kind of situation. Otherwise, if they're just simple questions that it's like, how do I do this or whatever, hopefully you can save those for the class sessions. And if we don't cover it in class, we can cover it in the Q&A session. So there is many of our People's Choice Classic users don't do their own quarterly filings, or they just give all their payroll information out of Classic to their accountant. And so to assist in that process, everybody who is participating in this can register their accountant. And they can, once they're registered, the accountant will be offered the ability to have an accountant's copy, where they would be able to get a backup from you, and they could restore into their office, and they could do the payroll processing for you if that's what you're used to doing, or if they're doing any other financial information. So like I said, the accountant's copy is targeted at those Classic users who depend on their accountant to do their quarterly filing. So keep in mind that that's something that's available. Those who purchase this, you'll be receiving an email. Will probably be included in the email, where you'll be given the link to download the trial to install, where you can go to a registration page to register your accountant. And once you register your accountant, then they would be sent a confirmation that they are participating, and they want to get a copy of accountant's copy of People's Choice Accounting. So keep that in mind. And if you want to talk to your accountant about that, obviously you'd want to let them know in advance that you're going to register them, and that they're going to get a free copy that can help you coordinate the services between you and your accountant. So next steps. If you haven't purchased the early bird update, go ahead and purchase it. You can go to safechoice.com/early bird. Or if you have purchased the tax update and want to proceed to purchase the upgrade course and training, you still go to early bird, and you can go ahead and make that purchase. And if you've already purchased the update and the upgrade, well, you'll be receiving an email next week with instructions to download and install this special 60-day free trial of People's Choice Accounting. And like I said, it's a special install. There'll be a landing page that comes up that confirms that you've installed it okay. And there's going to be a question on there of what kind of, when you go to the category of users, where you can kind of give us a broad indication. Yeah, I just use it for payroll. No, I use it for payroll and checkbook. And so we have a little bit idea of what your expectations are moving forward. So, and then as mentioned here, it'll be during the month, depending on if you're going to get the basic or the premier. The cost is the same. It's only a year from now when your first year's license expires that there'll be a price difference, but you'll be given the activation for that license and be able to proceed going into next year. Now, the new system, you won't have to buy a tax update again. The tax update is included in the annual license. And so all updates, whether it's taxes or program updates, are just part of the annual license fee. So I'll go ahead and we can open this up to the Q&A, and you can either ask your questions, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, if you feel free to do so, or if you're used to using Zoom, there's the option in the reactions to raise your hand, and then I can unmute you if you wish. Otherwise, if there aren't any questions, I must have covered everything quite well. So let me look at the chat. Anybody seeing anything in the chat? Do I need different check blanks for this software? It's a blank check stub, and so the classic checks will work. The date and check number on a pre-printed classic check is slightly different. Most people just use up their classic checks, and then when they need to reorder, they get the format that's designed for the current version. And then if you're deciding that you want to go with the blank check stock and the MIC check printing where you don't need to use pre-printed checks, well, then you'll just need to order some blank checks. Do I see a time when classic will no longer be supported? Oh, there probably will be a time. A lot of it is somewhat depending on the operating environment. I mean, there has been a few curves thrown at us with Windows 10 and Windows 11 in terms of keeping this program working. We're afraid there may be some day where it won't work at all. So at some point, there probably will be a day where it'll no longer be supported. Any other questions on there? Not seeing how many years history will be converted. We'll convert up to 7 years of history. That's typically the amount. If for some reason you need more than that, please let us know. There's some people who have accounts receivable and they'd like to have more history than 7 years. 7 years has been selected because that's what the IRS requires that you have records for. But keep in mind, you still will have your People's Choice Classic program, and unless something happens in the way of the Windows environment that I just described, you can go back, and if you want to look at history prior to 7 years, you'll still have that option. But we can bring in more than 7 years, but we'd want to talk to you about it first, because it does impact the time it takes to get everything converted. And but it also brings up the question of if you have more than one company in People's Choice Classic. We do have quite a few customers who track more than one company. And so there will be an upcharge for converting more than one company. But again, we'll discuss with that one-on-one, depending on what you want to convert. You know, if we're converting accounts receivable and things, it may cost a little more to convert a second company, but you can let us know when we first get started. Any other questions? See if anybody's raised their hand. And moving from PC to new People's Choice Top will be a nice step. At what point do we talk about the cloud-based? Okay, what's unique about our cloud option is it can go back and forth. I mean, if you decide to go to the cloud, but you still have the accountant's copy, you'll be able to make a backup on the cloud and send it to your accountant, and they'll be able to restore it on their desktop. We're actually in the process of implementing a new cloud server. Our current cloud server is on Windows Server 2012, which is being discontinued by Microsoft. And so our new cloud is going to be on a platform of Windows Server 19. I think it's 2019 or 2022. I think it might be 2019. We're making that decision as we speak. Will this interact with vendors to update pricing? I'm not quite sure. Vendors or suppliers? You must be talking about the accounts receivable inventory to update pricing. There are tools available for updating pricing. There's tools in there where you can do it in the program itself, but we also have another product called the Data Manager, and it's designed like if you get a new price list from one of your suppliers, that it gives you the ability to download that spreadsheet and then upload those new prices into the inventory. That's going to be an additional charge to have that ability, but to go in and implement other pricing manually is easily done. But it's probably something that we'd want to discuss one-on-one in terms of how many different vendors you need to update, because they may have different formats of how they deliver new pricing to you. We can cover that a little bit further in our classes, or if you want, if it's really important to you, you can email support@safechoice.com after this, and we can schedule to talk to you one-on-one on exactly what you're looking for in that case. What is the difference of the basic accounting? Or maybe you got in late, but the basic accounting is the one that I showed you, the main menu that just had the banking and accounting, where the Premier Accounting has also added the sales and the purchases. And so if you're not going to have accounts receivable where you're creating invoices, or you do not want to do accrued accounts payable where you track the balance of each individual vendor, then you would want the basic accounting. If you want the accounts receivable, or need the accounts receivable, or want to move and take advantage and convert your unpaid bills in Classic into the accounts payable feature in the current version, then you would need the Premier Accounting. We did cover that a little bit earlier in the webinar. So if you came in late and want to go back and watch a recording of the webinar, then it'll kind of show you those differences. Any other questions that are out there? Well, I'm going to just do a little bit of a recap and the review of the conversion upgrade training processes. Between now and October 1st, if you're going to proceed with the program upgrade, then you'll be getting a link to download and get the 60-day trial installed, so we know that you're all ready to accept a converted backup that you can restore into the system. And then once October comes, or you can send it right away. You can send it before then if you have all of September information entered in. Some people, if they're wanting to compare the bank reconciliations, may want to go ahead and do their bank reconciliation in People's Choice Classic before they submit it for conversion. But that's not required. The most important thing is to have all your payroll in, since this is really focused on implementing the payroll during the fourth quarter, and knowing that we can generate the 941 and W-2. So having everything in will greatly simplify this. And so that's kind of the recap going forward. So otherwise, unless there's other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording of the webinar.